I got this lovely little sample from Claire Smith a while back of Balenciaga's Florabotanica. This is not a perfume that I'd ever actually purchased, and by the time I really sort of knew anything about it, it was already discontinued, really difficult to get, but it's obviously quite a popular one. And my feelings when I smelt it were that it kind of gave me vibes of quite a few other things. Not because I think I've smelled anything that actually smells exactly like it. And of course, this does depend how it smells on your skin. Whether it kind of brings out the rose or the mint, or to be honest, on my skin, this brings out the cannabis and it gets super, super smoky and green. And the vetiver is quite strong as well. So I'm not mad for this particular perfume. But it did put me in mind of a few other things that I have either in samples or that I have in my collection, because I like mint, I like rose, I like green notes, and I sometimes quite like a kind of sharp and interesting scent. I normally like them to be slightly sweeter than this, to be honest. There is a sweetness that comes through, but it's still quite sharp, quite dry. It doesn't list any citruses in this, but I feel like there's almost a slight citrus peel smell in Florabotanica. But like I said, I get a lot of the green cannabis and the vetiver in this, and a little bit of rose and the mint I kind of get in the top and then kind of disappears on my skin. But anyway, so I did say that I would make a video with some suggestions, not of things that I think actually smell like it, but things that I think you might like if you like Florabotanica. I am going to have to zip through them quite quickly because I've got quite a few things that I think have a vibe that might be enjoyable to anyone who likes Florabotanica. Obviously, it's super personal, and one of the ones that I'll talk about, I already know that someone who likes Florabotanica doesn't like it. So I'm just going to put Florabotanica over there so we remember what we're talking about. And I've got my little sniff strip of that here. So if we start with a couple of things that are actually compared to Florabotanica on Fragrantica, let's start with Etat Libre de Orange, if I'm pronouncing that right, which I don't think I am. But anyway, this is You or Someone Like You. Now, I remember looking at this one. I've been looking at this one for ages, and I thought, right, I'm gonna actually spend a ridiculous amount. I think this was like £7 or £8 just for this sample. I'm going to buy this in order to compare it to that. Now, my feelings about this, despite the fact it's one of the top, I mean, it's not actually the top because I think they're quite niche, the things that are mainly compared to this, to Florabotanica, but this guy, I mean, it's quite a nice big sample as well. What are these? Yeah, 2 ml. So they're quite good big samples. Now, personally, I don't really think this smells like Florabotanica. It does share a couple of the same notes, but this is far more sugary. It's far sweeter. The mint is much stronger. The rose is not as strong, and there is no kind of smoky green notes. There's none of that kind of hay-like kind of smell, or that kind of woody, dark vetiver kind of smell. The notes in You or Someone Like You are top notes of mint, grapefruit, bergamot, and anise. Middle notes, green notes, cassis, rose, hedione, and white musk. This one smells horrible on my skin. I'm not really sure why, but it just doesn't work. Something turns in it. It gets kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It just smells a bit off. It doesn't smell like that on the card or from the bottle. It's just one that doesn't work with my chemistry. But I think this is considerably sweeter and more minty than Florabotanica. So it doesn't really put me in mind of Florabotanica. If I smell, no, in fact, I would say it really doesn't smell particularly like it. What it does smell like is 2 other perfumes that I have, which is Dirty from Lush, and this little babe, a little bit like the Body Shop Eau de Toilette Wild Pine. This came out this Christmas, so you could probably get it on eBay. Hopefully they'll bring it out again at next Christmas, or Christmas coming. It's pine, mint and sandalwood. It's kind of just slightly minty. It's quite light, but mainly I think it smells like dirty. So if I find the notes for dirty, let's have a look. Dirty from Lush is mint, tarragon, lavender, thyme, oak moss, sandalwood and neroli. Now this is a beautiful aromatic sweet minty perfume. So if what you like from Florabotanica is the mintiness, if that's what comes out on your skin and that's what you like, I think this is a very expensive way to get that kind of smell. You get a little bit of the rose. It's definitely a bit drier. It's not quite as sweet as Dirty, but I would say that if you like that kind of slightly green herbal sort of mintiness that you get in Florabotanica, Dirty is by far the cheaper thing to get, and Dirty is beautiful. It's probably about the same strength, you know. But yeah, I don't think this is the best alternative to this that I've smelt. So I'm going to put that one away. We're going to move Dirty and we shall move on to the next bit. So the next one that is actually compared on Fragrantica is this. This is Paul Smith. This is called, what is this called? I think it's just called Woman. Oh yes, there we go. Paul Smith Woman. So this is a perfume I know from my university years because a friend of mine wore this as her signature scent. So I'm quite used to this smell. Okay, let's have a look first. I mean, it has notes on here. The notes on Fragrantica are slightly different. So the notes on Fragrantica say pink pepper, pink pepper, black currant, bergamot, mandarin, orange, clementine, pear leaf. So a lot of fruit. Rose, freesia, green tea, geranium, lily of the valley. So there you go. You've got a bit of the greenness. You've got some lightness. You've got the geranium and the rose. Cedar, vetiver, tonka bean and patchouli. So, and the patchouli is giving this a bit of a greenness. It's not quite smoky. But this one I can see it with this one a little bit more, but it's sweeter. And the freesia is quite strong here. I definitely can smell some rose in this. I definitely get a bit of geranium. But I think the tea and the tonka take this in a slightly different direction to Florabotanica. I know that Claire Smith doesn't like this perfume because she did say when I had it in a What I Wore last week that she smelt this and she doesn't like it. And she likes Florabotanica. So it's possible that this one just wouldn't work for you. But this is a really good cheap thing to try if you can get hold of it. To see whether it floats your boat if you like Florabotanica, because I think it's sweeter. It definitely has that tea vibe in it. It's not as dry as Florabotanica, but I definitely can see some similarities here. This one more so than the Etat de Libre d'Orange. So I think that one's actually quite a good shout. I think that's a good perfume. And just to mention, Paul Smith Woman is done by Natalie Lorson. Now, you might know her name because she's quite famous. She's done quite a few of the Parfums de Marly, amongst many, many others. So I just want to have a quick shout out because this does not smell anything like Florabotanica, but I do feel like there is a definite possibility that you would like another Natalie Lorson perfume, Amethyst by Lalique, if you like Florabotanica. There is greenness in here. There is, although it's like a berry perfume, it's a woody, light, watery, sharp, fresh, natural berry smell that has a lot of greenness, a lot of green leaves kind of smell, and very little sweetness. It's much more soapy than Florabotanica, but it's such a beautiful perfume. It's one that when I first got it, I wasn't sure about it because I thought it smelled like soap, like a bar soap, not shampoo. And then I got absolutely obsessed with it. So I do think if you like these kind of scents, then you might really like this one. I particularly like this in colder weather. But yeah, so this is also, my husband also really likes this. So I think this is a real grower and it might be worth looking at, especially if you like Natalie Lorson perfumes. So what am I going to talk about now? Let's have a look. I will save those until... Okay, so if what you like about Florabotanica is the rose... And again, I don't necessarily think it smells like this, but one of my favourite kind of simple, straightforward rose perfumes is Fleur Fatale by Kim Kardashian. Now, this is not one that smells very good any time other than like warm weather, but in warm weather, I think it is such an excellent rose scent. I think that it just is a really good cheapie, and so I just wanted to shout it out quickly because I've had many rose perfumes. I nearly always declutter them. I don't like most of them. I actually had this once and decluttered it because I had a massive bottle and then I had to get it back because I'm like, in nice weather, this is actually a really nice, simple, pretty rose, and it's light, it's not too sweet, and I think that's quite hard to find, so I just wanted to shout that one out really quickly. Now, let's have a look, vibe-wise. I'm saving the things that I think are the most similar till the end. But I think let's have a look at one that I absolutely love, which is a rose perfume called Un Jardin sur le Toit. This is from Hermès. The reason I don't have a bottle of this is because it's so expensive, but I love this perfume. I think it's beautiful. Now, this is much more fruity than Florabotanica, but I think if you're not worried about spending money, then I think that maybe this is a really nice summer green rose perfume. The notes in this are grass, red apple, rose, pear, rosemary and magnolia. And when you first spray it, it's kind of quite level in terms of dry sharpness with this because of that grass. There's like a herbaceousness that rather than being smoky like it is in Florabotanica, it's just a bit more herbal, green. And then the rose in this is so beautiful in the dry down. I think you definitely get apple, so the apple is what sweetens this up more so than anything in Florabotanica. But if you like green rose scents, I think Sur le Toit is such a fabulous perfume. And again, like if you're not worried about spending Florabotanica style bucks, then you can get these for like 100 and under depending on the size. I think they're about 60 for the 30ml, so sometimes with these, because they're quite light, it's worth like getting a big, just investing in a bigger bottle because you get more mLs for your money, like overall. But the thing with this, when you first spray it, it's quite transparent and then it gets stronger and stronger, and it actually, it's like, it's not a strong perfume, but it lasts for quite a long time as a beautiful skin scent. And the other one, if you do like these kind of perfumes, it's definitely worth me mentioning Un Jardin sur le Nil, because this is also a fabulous perfume that has a slight dry sharpness. There's a slight vegetal vibe about it. It's slightly floral, it's slightly fruity, it's slightly woody. It's delicious, but it's like a green mango perfume. Again, doesn't really smell like this in particular, but it has that same kind of vibe. So the notes in this one are grapefruit, mango, tomato, which is again that beautiful greenness, carrot, lotus, bulrush, orange, hyacinth, peony, base notes, musk, iris, incense, lavender and cinnamon. And it is very much in the kind of general kind of style of something like Florabotanica. Right, so let's see, what have we got next? Okay, let's just talk about this baby, and at the same time we are going to talk about this, because they smell incredibly similar and wearing them is incredibly similar. So I'm going to have a look through and find the notes here. I forgot to tell you the notes of Fleur Fatale. Fleur Fatale is bergamot, blackcurrant, violet, middle notes of tea, rose, peony, iris, white musk, sandalwood and amber in the base. So that's that one. Now, this used to be my signature scent, which is why it's got a good old dent in it. I've been through many bottles of In Love Again by Yves Saint Laurent. This is the reformulated version of what was like, I think, a 90s or early 2000s classic. Now, I always think of this as a rose perfume, but it also smells a little bit like muscat wine. So it has a sharpness in it. There is also a real greenness in it. It's got a kind of grapey vibe to it, but it's definitely a slightly musky rose perfume. Really interesting, very pretty. It's light. It doesn't necessarily last particularly long, but it's gorgeous. Slightly perfumey. It's not quite as dry as Florabotanica, but I think it's in that same kind of realm. Now, they only list blackcurrant, mandarin orange in the top for this one, and then middle notes of grapes, rose, peony, base notes of blackberry and musk. However, the original version, which I think you can still get a sense for the old notes in this, the notes in the old one are listed as top notes grapefruit, blackcurrant, cassis leaf, blueberry, vodka, apple. Then the middle notes are grapefruit, rose, water lily, base notes tomato, blackberry, musk and sandalwood. So it's more green, it's more sharp, there's more going on. But I definitely think that this might be a nice option for anyone who quite likes this kind of scent. And Kayali Citrus honestly just smells so much like it. This is called Citrus, but I do think this is a rose perfume, really. It's so similar to this. I mean, it even looks like it, you know. So Citrus by Kayali, the notes are top notes of pink grapefruit, rhubarb, bergamot, blackcurrant and pink pepper. Middle notes of Bulgarian rose and damask rose. Base notes oak, moss, musk and tonka bean. So again, these are both slightly sweeter, but they definitely have a real dry rose note running through them. They've both got a real greenness. They've got that kind of citrusy, peely sharpness. They're a bit more fruity, definitely. But the oak moss in this gives it like a different vibe to kind of a normal citrusy rose. It makes it a little bit greener, a little bit more earthy, which I think is what you get from the marijuana in Florabotanica, or cannabis I should say. So I think both of those might be really interesting for anyone who likes these kind of perfumes. All right, we're getting down to the nitty gritty now. So a couple of relatively cheap, kind of not particularly long lasting, but quite good scents that might be interesting if you like this one, are both from Clarins. They're both their treatment scents. So we have two here. One is Eau Extraordinaire and one is Eau de Jardin. So I think Extraordinaire is quite a new one. I'm just going to get the notes up. Let's have a look. So Eau Extraordinaire is, I think the patchouli is quite green and heavy in Eau Extraordinaire, and the citruses are really heavy. So it's not as much like Florabotanica, to be honest, but again, similar vibe because it just lists citruses, ginger, jasmine and patchouli. So very different notes, but a similar kind of vibe. Much more so, Eau de Jardins is a slightly minty citrus perfume with a lot of green notes and rose. So this one here, the notes are top notes of citruses, orange, grapefruit, cassis, bergamot and Amalfi lemon. Middle notes of mint, rose, bay leaf. Base notes of Virginia cedar, musk, vetiver and patchouli. Now the patchouli in it is quite green. Obviously the bay leaf gives that a slight green kind of aromatic vibe. The mint and the cassis, they are both quite green. And then you've got that slight citrus. And there is a rose. So this is, again, sweeter, I think, and not quite as dry as Florabotanica. Definitely more fruity, but I think it shares quite a similar vibe. It's much lighter. It won't last as long. But you can get these for relatively affordable prices, and they're really nice pick-me-ups. They're great for summer. So yeah, as I said, I think Eau de Jardins is the one that is the most reminiscent of that. But if you like this, you'll probably like Eau Extraordinaire as well. Then we've got a couple that are much more of a vibe, you know. So I'm not talking about these because I think they've got like massive similarities. This is very much like, if you like this, you might like that. So I only have a miniature of Lovely by Sarah Jessica Parker because for me it is a bit dry, a bit sharp. There's a bit too much of the patchouli, and I don't really get along with patchouli. I just think Lovely has a slight vibe I wouldn't be surprised, if you see what I mean, that someone who wears Florabotanica would, you know, meet me smelling like lovely. There is a dry sharpness in both of them that I really kind of think is reminiscent of each other, even though they're very, very different profiles and smells. So like, lovely is top notes of lavender, martini, bergamot, mandarin orange, and palisandre rosewood. Middle notes of patchouli, orchid, narcissus. Base notes musk, woody notes, cedar, and white amber. And it really does. It's got that. It shares the amber note, and then it's got that woodiness and greenness, but that's coming from the patchouli and the woods rather than the cannabis note that you get in Florabotanica. And obviously it's not rose, so if you're specifically looking for something that isn't got rose in it, you're not going to like it. But I do think it's quite an interesting one in terms of you know, just having like the same kind of feel to it. And then just because I think it gets short shrift, but I do think that if you like things like Florabotanica, you might actually quite enjoy CK One. It's quite it's designed to be unisex. It's the first unisex perfume that I remember that was really popular. There wasn't like a cologne, and it's quite green. It's a bit fruity. It's got rose in it. It's floral and a bit woody. It's also ambery. So it's got a shed load of notes because it's old. Top notes, lemon, green notes, bergamot, mandarin orange, pineapple, cardamom, papaya. Middle notes, lily of the valley, jasmine, violet, nutmeg, rose, orris root, freesia. Base notes, green accord, musk, cedar, sandalwood, oak moss, green tea, and amber. Now this does dry down definitely to be sweeter than Florabotanica, as I think a lot of things do, because I think Florabotanica is quite dry and has incredibly small amount of sweetness. Yeah, and it's quite smoky, very green. So this one is kind of almost an easier wear because it's slightly sweeter, but I do think that CK One is a really affordable, nice, green, citrusy, slightly floral summer scent. And considering most of what I'm about to show you is going to get a bit more expensive, I think it's worth shouting that one out because I do think you might like it. Now then, let's see. So now we're getting to the nitty gritty of things that I think are starting to smell a bit more like it. Yeah, so this is a miniature I have of Body Tender from Burberry. Body Tender, I think we're starting to really reach into the general scent profile that you get in Florabotanica. Honestly, even more so than the things on Fragrantica I've seen that are compared to it. Now, Body, to me, is a sharp green rose perfume. Body Tender, the notes are top notes of wormwood, apple, lemon and peach. Middle notes rose, tea, jasmine and sandalwood. Base notes musk, cashmere wood, amber and vanilla. I get that amber, I get the rose, I get a ton of wormwood, and that wormwood is what is giving me that same kind of, it's almost smoky, sharp, vegetal smell that you get in the Florabotanica from the cannabis, you know. But you've definitely got that rose as well. I think it really is. I think it's not quite as sharp. It's slightly, as it says, more tender. But I do think these smell quite similar. Yeah, I really do think that these are quite a good match. And I think that if you like this, it might really be worth trying this one. I kept this little miniature. I had the original Tender and the original Body even, and I just found it too sharp. So it's possible that the original Body would be even closer to this because it wouldn't be quite as smoothed out and soft. But yeah, that wormwood and rose combination with the amber and the sandalwood, and just like what smells like a very sharp apple and lemon, it really smells to me very similar to that one. So I think that would be a really, really good bet. That's one of my favourite comparisons to it. Another favourite comparison I have is this. This is another affordable gem. Cerruti Image for women. The big bottles of this are so cool because I think this is the actual sprayer on the big bottles. I've got a couple of miniatures of this. Now, This is such an amazingly cheap perfume for like how cool it is, and it's got really interesting notes. So I'm going to find the notes so I can tell you. Cerruti Image Women has top notes of grapefruit, pepper and green notes, middle notes of mint, base notes birch, leather, Virginia cedar and amber. So this is the only thing this one's really missing is the rose. But it has, the grapefruit provides it with the kind of sharp smell, slightly citrusy smell that I get when I first spray Florabotanica. The green notes, I mean, speak for themselves. You do get a bit of mint, but that leather gives it a smokiness that is starting to kind of veer towards mixing with those green notes into the kind of cannabis-y smell that I get from Florabotanica. And again, it has that nice amber that you get in Florabotanica. So it's, I think this one is a really good shout, and because you can get it for so cheap. In the UK, you can get a like a 75ml bottle of Cerruti Image for like, I don't know how much it was maybe £17. So, and you can also quite easily get these little miniatures to try. So I do think if you like the mint and the greenness and the sharpness and the smokiness in Florabotanica, then this might be a really, really good shout. In fact, I'm going to do these both at the same time. I have two mini Miller Harris perfumes. One is called Amongst the Lace and one is called Lost in the City. And they separately have things in them that really remind me of this. For a start, they're both quite sharp, which is helpful because I think Florabotanica is very, very sharp. So if we start with Amongst the Lace, the notes in Amongst the Lace, which I find quite difficult to say, Amongst the Lace, lemon verbena, lime, mint, red berries, cardamom, bourbon geranium, bergamot, blackcurrant, fennel, angelica, base notes, vetiver, musk, moss, myrrh, sandalwood. So this one is sharp, it's unisex, it's green. There's a lot of geranium in here. I'm just going to spray this one out. Ooh. Which I think is providing a huge amount of the dryness that comes in Florabotanica. Yeah, it's really got a definite vibe, which is one of the other reasons why I'm absolutely sure that Florabotanica has some kind of citrus or citrus peel or something in it that it doesn't list. There's that mint. It's got a very similar mint note, definitely. And then this one dries down. Again, as with Florabotanica, it warms up a little bit, it sweetens up a little bit. And you've got that geranium, which is kind of sitting in for the rose. So you don't get the rose vibe in Amongst the Lace, but I think you get a lot of other vibes. There's something about the myrrh and the vetiver, the moss and the sandalwood, with that kind of mintiness, with the fennel and the green angelica. It really does give you that slight smokiness that you get in Florabotanica. I'd say there, yeah, if you remove the rose, they're getting quite similar in a few ways. Now, Amongst the Lace is more fruity, so if you don't like kind of a little bit more of a berry smell, you might not like it. It's maybe got a little bit more of a kind of an ace licorice smell because of that fennel, but I do think it would be a really good option. In fact, I honestly think a lot of the Miller Harris perfumes will be really popular with anyone who likes Florabotanica because they're often dry, sharp, really green, unisex, have all those vibes. Personally, my favourite is this one. So this is Lost in the City. It's not just Amongst the Lace, it's Dance Amongst the Lace. I always forget to give it its full name because it's so long. Yeah, this one really definitely has vibes of Florabotanica. Although it's almost like if you mix these two together, you'd probably be approaching something closer to this. But this is top notes of blackcurrant and bergamot and angelica. And that bergamot is sharp here. Middle notes, rhubarb, geranium and rose. Base notes, Earl Grey tea, musk and amber. There is a greenness in this. There's a lot of geranium and rose. But the rhubarb in this gets really strong on me and is really beautiful, and it does start to sweeten up. You get that nice warmth in the base from the amber again. They're all sharing a very similar amber here. But yeah, this, if you don't like rhubarb, you probably won't like Lost in the City. But if you do, it has the vibe of Florabotanica without the smokiness and with a little bit more fruit, so rhubarb. But it's super pretty. It has a real kind of almost piercing sharpness, the same way that I find with Florabotanica. So probably not things that I would wear at certain times of year. This is one of my favourites. This is another thing that used to be a signature scent. I used to have a full bottle of this many years ago when it first came out. So Hedonist Cassis is a sharp green rose and blackcurrant perfume. I'm going to spray it out. I'll tell you the notes while I'm spraying it. So top notes of blackcurrant. Oh, come on. Oh, that's a hard sprayer. Grapefruit and rhubarb. So again, this one is actually quite similar to Lost in the City, but to me it's way drier and more rosy. Oh, that rose. Okay. In the middle, cassis, grass, Bulgarian rose, base notes, cedar and musk. It's got a slightly syrupy but very watery blackcurrant that's very sharp. A sharp grapefruit, sharp rhubarb. You really get the cassis leaf and you really get the grass. So you've got a real natural green smell and a real rosy smell, which is super pretty, really nice. So this is only though for people who like a niche scent. These are expensive. Miller Harris are quite expensive, but you can get them on the grey market a bit easier than you can with Viktoria Minya. Viktoria Minya Hedonist Cassis is like 125 quid for a 40ml bottle. So they are not, she is not cheap at all. She's very, very niche, but very beautiful, sharp but pretty green, quite easy to wear, quite interesting, and has a vibe that's quite similar to this without actually entirely smelling like it. It shares the greenness and it's got a lovely kind of sharp green rose, which is what makes me think of this. Yeah, super, super pretty, very, very lovely. And I think my last one that I think has definite similarities with this, and happily is a very affordable version. Yeah, I can't wear this personally because it has that tar-like musk in it that I can't get along with, but this is a stupid name. Lacoste L1212 Rose. So here's the bottle. So this one has a equally piercing sharpness that I get from Florabotanica. It has top notes green mandarin, which is very sharp, a very bitter citrusy smell, and then mint. Then it has rose and frangipani in the middle. Base notes are musk and ambrette. It doesn't list wood in this, but I find there is definitely a slight greenness, a woodiness, and it has that very dry rose. So I think it's very possible that if you like Florabotanica, you're going to like this one. It is definitely rosy, it's definitely green, you've got that minty vibe. You don't have like the warmth from amber, but you've got that nice warmth from ambrette instead. And I wouldn't be surprised if green mandarin is exactly what's, or some kind of green citrus is what's in the top of Florabotanica. Florabotanica, I can't believe I'm saying it, might actually be sweeter. It might actually be sweeter than this one, but only in the deep dry down, you know. And honestly, in the deep dry down is when it's the closest to this. So the very deep dry down of Florabotanica is when it's closest to Paul Smith Woman. So my favourite picks for people who like Florabotanica are Lacoste 12.12 Rose, because that is a rose and mint perfume that is sharp. Paul Paul Smith Woman, because it's a very affordable, slightly rosy perfume that shares some of the same notes but just generally has the same vibe as the deep dry down of Florabotanica. It doesn't share the kind of sharpness, but it has a slight smokiness, and I think that one's just a real bargain, so it might be worth trying. These three all have a vibe that lends itself to the style of perfume that I feel Florabotanica is, which is kind of sharp and slightly citrusy, floral, green, got like a slight smoky or woody vibe to it. But I do think that maybe overall, I think if you want minty and smoky, I think Cerruti Image is going to be maybe a really, really good option for you. I actually think, having it on my skin, Burberry Body Tender might be one of the closest to smelling like this one. Let me have another sniff. Yeah, I really do think that Burberry Body Tender is a really good option if you can get hold of it. I do know this is discontinued, which is super annoying. So Burberry Body, the original, is also a rose perfume. So I do think that any of the Burberry Bodies might be worth trying, because I think it's that wormwood that gives it that green, sharp, almost slightly smoky smell. So if you've got that with the rose, and then you've got the sandalwood and the amber in the base, then I think you are going to be approaching quite a similar vibe to Florabotanica. Now obviously this is all to my nose, so it is definitely going to be different for different people. As I said, for me personally, Florabotanica goes crazy smoky, which is probably why I think it has a vibe of this, because this has leather in it, which gives it a super smoky smell. Almost smells a bit more like suede to me. And I don't get as much of the mint as I do the rose and the cannabis. But like I said, I hope that this is just helpful, just for interest, for anyone who really likes Florabotanica, who thinks that they want to just try other things that might give them that same vibe. Honestly, I've never smelled anything that I think smells exactly the same as Florabotanica. So unless you guys want to try and find a dupe, I think it would have to be like an acceptance that it's not actually going to smell the same and it won't replace it. But I do think Paul Smith Woman in the very deep dry down really Paul Smith Woman just generally, when you spray it, reminds me of the deep dry down of Florabotanica. And then these two in different ways, this in a green rose and this in a smoky mint, both have real elements of this. So anyway, I hope this was useful. I'll stop going on now because I talked about so many things. Let me know in the comments if you have any of these, if you get the same vibe from Florabotanica. Yeah, I hope it was helpful. Bye guys.